Hi, everybody. I'm Miss Mowry, and today I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about one of my favorite topics in world history, which is the Reformation. Um, the Reformation is really important because it had many impacts around the world. And if you look at this map right here, I have on my slide, I've got this area circle right here. This is all of Europe. Okay, so we're talking about multiple countries in Europe. Were affected by the Reformation. So, one of the target learning areas for this time period, 1450 to 1750, following the Renaissance, was the Reformation. So, explaining some of the impacts of the Reformation include the political, intellectual, artistic, economic, and religious impacts of the Reformation. So we will talk about a couple of those as we go and have some activities to do as well. So just for a quick overview, the Reformation began in the 16th century. So we are talking about the 1500s. If you think about what was going on in the world in the 1500s, this was kind of the time period where the hemispheres started connecting. England and Spain were fighting for political power. Um, the Spanish were sending conquistadors to the Americas. So right around that time period in the early 1500s is that time period where the hemispheres started connecting and there was global communication going on. The Reformation, my last little point here, is the Reformation caused the splintering of Europe and Western religion. So up until this point, Europe was pretty much unified by Roman Catholicism, with the Pope at the head of that religion. So the Reformation caused the splintering of the predominant religion. So what have you heard about the Reformation? Maybe you've heard about the 95 Theses, maybe you've heard about King Henry VIII. So I want you to send me 1 to 2 sentences about your knowledge about the Reformation. And if you don't know anything, that's okay. But just think about it for a minute. I'll give you a minute or two to think about what have you heard about the Reformation. While you're thinking about that, I just want to share a quote with you. This is a quote from reference.com, and it's about the Reformation. The Reformation inspired a mood of anti-authoritarianism, which led to backlash against the feudal system and, by extension, to the democratic movement around the world. In the centuries following the Reformation, movements like women's suffrage and the abolition of slavery trace their roots back to Reformation era principles. Okay, so what does that mean? The movements that we saw in our country here in the United States, such as the abolition of slavery, late 1800s, after the Civil War, and the women's suffrage movement in the early 1900s, the quote says it can trace their roots back to Reformation era principles. So some of these reformists began to look back at some of the ideas, some of the policies of the Reformation, because the Reformation gave everyday people much more freedom. Okay, it gave them freedom from the state, freedom from religion, freedom to have more education. And again, that goes with all of those impacts that we've kind of been touching on about the Reformation. But a lot of our modern day movements can trace its roots back to the Reformation, which is really interesting. So just to kind of get us started, we kind of set the timeline of the Reformation with one of these big critical events. And this was in 1517 in Germany. And this image that you see here, this is Martin Luther, the founder of Lutheranism. So he was a monk in Germany. And the event that he's doing right now is nailing this document, this 95 Theses, on the wall of a door of a cathedral. So the 95 Theses was a document that stated all of the problems that Luther felt was going on with the Catholic Church at the time, such as selling of indulgences, the priests living a life of debauchery, which did not adhere to Catholicism, like they weren't being celibate, they were drinking and doing things that they weren't supposed to. So this kind of embodied all of his um, reforms that he wanted to institute with the Catholic authority in that area. Some of the other key players that I want to talk about in the Reformation, Martin Luther, as I just mentioned. Also, there's John Calvin. So John Calvin was a French lawyer who founded Calvinism. So again, Lutheranism and Calvinism, just different sects, different types of Christianity. King Henry VIII, you've probably heard of because he beheaded several of his wives, but he also had a very critical role in the Reformation in England because he was the first monarch to break with the Catholic Church. And last but not least, one of the other key players here is the Italian Pope Leo X, who was the Pope during the Reformation and the Pope that would end up excommunicating Martin Luther in 1521. Another way that we can kind of look at the Reformation, and it's not the vocabulary and the dates that are as important, more as just looking at it, how did it have global impacts? You know, what were the things that set off alarm bells around the world with the Reformation? So right here you can see starting with the 95 Theses in 1517 and ending in 1648 with the Peace of Westphalia. So again, you just kind of look through this timeline right here at these major events, and you can see that it does have impacts around the world. William Tyndale publishes an English translation of the Bible. So in England, and again with Henry VIII, breaking with the Catholic Church and passing the Act of Supremacy, which made him the head of the Church of England. John Calvin, again, that French lawyer, and he was writing from Switzerland. John Knox in Scotland, King James Version of the Bible published in Scotland, and the 30 Years' War. Again, many countries in Europe were embroiled in the 30 Years' War. So again, that global impact. It's not just England or it's not just France. Okay, it's many of these big power playing countries that ended up getting embroiled in this religious debate and war. Also here, 1545 in the Council of Trent, not only did the spread of Christianity spark political movements, but it also kind of sparked a counter-reformation. I have kind of an image here, a graphic image of some of the major impacts. So as I stated in the beginning, some of the main ideas here on the impacts: religious impacts, economic impacts, intellectual impacts, and political impacts. So with the spread of Christianity, it kind of sparked a counter-reformation where the Catholics kind of wanted to come back and try to take over. And then when the Council of Trent got together, all of the popes and the big names and the Catholic groups came together and tried to discuss, you know, what are we going to do about this? What's the solution? How are we going to punish these heretics? And how are we going to reform? Okay, if this is what people are asking for. Some of the economic impacts of the Reformation: all of this capital that had previously been used in the religious sector was moved into the public sector. So that promoted entrepreneurship, new business, rise of the middle class. Also, the intellectual impacts, kind of economics spilled over into intellectual. There was more emphasis on scholarly learning. Normal people in the public had more access to reading and education and sacraments of the church rather than relying on priests to go and read the vernacular, which was in Latin. There were new multiple translation of the Bible in different countries. And so again, normal everyday people had access to those types of materials, which promoted a better rate of literacy and learning. And then last but not least, the political impacts. Of course, it led to a series of wars and persecutions all over Europe, not just the 30 Years' War, but multiple persecutions. And it was a clear challenge to authority because, as I said before, up until this point, the countries of Europe are pretty much, you know, united within religion. But once the Reformation came about, it was a clear challenge to not only papal authority, but just to religious authority in general, as people started taking a more humanistic approach to how they learned and questioning authority. So right here, I have an activity also that I want you to complete. This is a Venn diagram. And if you look over here on the left side, okay, your left circle is representing Catholicism, and your right circle over here is representing Protestantism, okay, or Christianity. And so in the middle where they intersect is, I want you to start to think about similarities. So if we think about the tenets of Catholicism, and it's okay if you don't know what those are, and also the tenets of Protestantism, what are the differences and what are the similarities? So if you click on Catholicism, I have a link attached, and it is a document from the Britannica Encyclopedia, one about Catholicism and one about Protestantism. So if you click on that, you'll see those links there. So what I want you to do is work on that for a few minutes. Think about what was religion like before the Reformation and what was religion like after the Reformation, and what are the similarities that are the same. So after you send me your 1 to 2 sentence discussion on your prior knowledge about the Reformation and you complete your Venn diagram, you will receive your exit ticket. So you may email those activities to me whenever you're done, anytime. And here's my email address right here. So thanks for listening. See you soon.